Hi and welcome to Shelf Life. Thanks for joining us on our weekly journey into Sydney's literature scene.
Now, we have a really exciting program ahead of us, don't we, Melissa?
We sure do.
Our focus this week is on writers and storytellers who find inspiration in exploring the connections between identity and place. We'll also look at a really exciting multi-platform project that's using virtual world technology to explore how Aboriginal people lived more than 200 years ago.
We're also featuring a conversation between Alice Walker and Alexis Wright, and we chat to the organiser of a Western Sydney Film Festival that's quickly becoming the next big thing for visual storytellers looking for that big break.
But first, let's meet some talented young writers from the annual What Matters competition. Run by the Whitlam Institute and inspired by Gough Whitlam and his commitment to getting young people involved in shaping Australia's future, the competition asks the not-so-simple question, what matters? What are the issues that they think are important? As always, if you have any ideas watching the show, make sure you share them with us on our Twitter or Facebook page.
When you feel like you're stuck in a rut, just find your way today, don't wait.
What Matters is the simplest of competitions in a way because it's simply asking young students, school students from years 5 to years 12, to write what matters to them in 400 to 600 words. It's an opportunity for young people to say without, tell us what they think. And what we find is we get not only a very large response, which is great, but we also find that each year it's like a window into what's going through the minds of these young people, and they're extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary in what they tell us about their lives, about their views about society, the things that really are important to them.
What matters to me is living an ordinary life and not having to leave an extraordinary legacy in order for your life to be considered worthwhile.
I wrote about feminism and rape culture, and that matters to me because it's something that affects society nowadays, but not many people realise it's happening at all because it's sort of just become like embedded in our society and no one realises that it's like not something that's okay.
The name of my essay was Animal Smuggling, It's Wrong. And I wrote it because it's such a major industry, and how they cruelly treat animals is really quite shocking, and it's not really known much, so I just really wanted to tell the public.
Records of any such person, which was impossible.
In New South Wales and the ACT, the home competition if you like, we had, I think it was close on well over 2,500, I think it was 2,700 entries this year, and we had over 300 entries in Tasmania. And the judging panel are prominent writers and journalists, people like Emily Rodder, Andrew West from the ABC, Julie Hare, who's the higher education editor in The Australian, Eric Brace from the Literacy and Numeracy Foundation. The judges come back with a whole range of reflections, but really I think what they tell us the most is that the very straight, direct way that these young people are articulating the things that are important to them. Sometimes it's quite raw and quite personal, and it can be quite challenging when you read them.
What matters to me is the recognition of what we actually do in war. And my essay was really about the way that we characterise people as killers or heroes. And in times of war, we make people out to be these massive heroes. But then when we look back at it, we go, no, they were killers. And it's the way that we kind of have this changing perspective on war and on killing. And I think that it was really about getting people to question what's happening right now in the world and whether we should really be involved in the conflicts that we're involved in.
I think we've been running this for almost 10 years now. I've done the last 3, and it is one of the highlights of the year for me. Some of the topics I wasn't ready for. One was on animal smuggling, which I'd never really thought about before. But I thought what was interesting this year was how many of the stories were about family, the strength that a family could be, the ethos and values, but also about dysfunctional families and the way things can break down.
The writing process is a fundamental skill, no matter what the medium we've got or the multi-platform that we've got. So it's exciting to see people being asked to write 600 words of what matters, which is a provocative title in the first place, and get them to be both narrative and descriptive in their writing. So it makes a bit of intellectual sense.
Well, what matters to me is giving it a go and believing in yourself. Even if you win or lose, or just not listening to the people who say if you want to have a dream, you've got to achieve this goal, and giving it a go means you can like believe in yourself no matter, people might think, oh, what a stupid thing, he's never going to achieve that goal. But just not listening to them and giving it a go and believing in yourself. Even if you don't achieve it, it's learning from it. Yeah.
Made in the West is a film festival that is representative of Western Sydney, and not just filmmakers in Western Sydney, but anyone who comes to Western Sydney to make films.
You know, I started going out with Tom when I...
Tell the story that you want to tell it in what genre that you would like to, whether it's horror, whether it's comedy, a web series, a trailer for a bigger film. I think the only sort of restriction we have would be time. Try and keep it under 10 minutes, but at the same time, we still don't like to restrict people. If it's over 10 minutes, if it's a bit of a pearl of a film, we'll put it on. Made in the West is in its 4th year. It's grown immensely. I'm actually quite surprised of the reception that we're getting from it. Not just from audience goers, but filmmakers themselves. Like, so many filmmakers and storytellers are coming out of the woodwork. It's unbelievable.
Great to see so many student films in it as well. Yeah, it's good to hear they got out there. The students have been really quite standouts from what we've seen so far, which is really surprising.
We had low expectations, but they're pretty amazing.
I'm very impressed to be put in a lot with such a versatile range of filmmakers, creators, writers, artists. It's a bit of an honour, actually.
It's just sensational. Yeah, there's not much in the West that caters for filmmakers alike. It's mainly all in Sydney suburbs, so I think it's fantastic.
Western Sydney's got some great films.
Film's an interesting thing. I find film is an intersection of all arts. It's an intersection where you're met with music, visual language, editing, the order of how you tell the story, script writing, acting. It's really this intersection of a lot of artists, and it has this ability to invoke these real sort of deep emotions in people. And I think that's the strength of storytelling through film.
Sunday! Bridget LeMay!
I'm a little bit shocked. I mean, it feels like the effort that you put in has really paid off, and I feel ready for the next project. My film's named Sunday. It's a short film, coming-of-age film, about a young girl who deals with her first major disappointment in life. It was filmed entirely in Blacktown. I really enjoyed filming in Blacktown, especially pre-production, meeting a lot of the community, and we ended up with a lot of extras that were all from the local community that we shot in. But I'm still amazed that we did so well at the festival, and I feel so much support. It's phenomenal.
I made Utopia, which was basically a short film about people waking up one day, normal people, and they realised they had superpowers. It was sort of like more of a music narrative. The thing about Western Sydney is that a lot of people make films, but not many people talk. So I think it's really nice that you can see everyone else that has made a film, and everyone, like, you can network.
I think it's a really great, initiative for the Western City to have their films being shown, and especially have the students and all eager filmmakers have an opportunity to showcase their work. I think it's fantastic.
It's got so much more room to grow, and every year it just seems to double in size. So I'd just like to see over the next 5 years for it just to continue doubling. That'd be great. Made in the West 2015. Check it out.
Alice Walker is an international author, activist and poet, and of course was the first African-American woman to win the Pulitzer Prize for her novel, The Colour Purple. We went along when Alice appeared on stage with celebrated Australian author and academic, Alexis Wright, to hear them talk about civil rights and the cost of political engagement.
The swamp had become truly wondrous in the eyes of the benefactors. These locals, along with the other detained people from God knows where, all jelly soft now from years of intergenerational interventionist Australian policies of domination, a bit of assimilation, a bit of integration, a bit of giving up your own sovereignty, a bit of closing the gap, and was always paraded as Australia's international showcase of human rights.
Alexis, in the Swan book, you create a portrait of an Aboriginal man, Warren Finch, a leader in a sense, but a leader in a very different sense to the other main Aboriginal male character, the Harbour Master, who is an Aboriginal healer. But Warren Finch plays an important political role in your book, and he pays for it quite dearly too, doesn't he? Can you talk about the costs of political engagement in that way for us?
The character of Warren Finch is... he was trained to be a leader.
God's gift.
Yeah, well, God's gift. He was such a talented boy, and he was trained, with the expectation that he would do really good things in his world, but he became, a person who with influence in the whole world.
He was to be the saviour, wasn't he?
He was to be the saviour, and there is that expectation sometimes that we've got to have this Aboriginal person to be the God's gift, and everybody wants the God's gift, and we've seen that in reality, and then can't hear the voices of the masses, and he falls into the trap, of power and wanting to be the most powerful person. And we do see that in real life too. People wanting to become part of this system and going in there and say, yes, I'll fix up all the problems for Aboriginal people, and I'll become a member of Parliament, and I'll become, Abbott's right-hand man, and and they all fail. They all fall down.
If he lived today to see Obama as president, he would definitely feel the sour. because what we are all being educated, hopefully, about the futility of believing in a system that's worldwide that is just means us no good. Because the way it's set up, even if you have a black person as president or a woman as president of a country that has a rotten system, it's going to be a rotten system. And the hope then would be that the woman or the man, the person of color, whoever, can actually just survive it. I wonder how Obama does survive this. There's a cost to embracing something that is detrimental to you. You write with great tenderness in your letters to President Obama, letters on the presence of torture in the world, letters on the burden of the presidency, and actually say that not to have won the presidency would in itself also have been a gift. I met him when he came to San Francisco, and I introduced him to my community there, before we were trying to get votes and everything. And I said to him, as we had, a couple of seconds, and I said, you don't have to be president. You could be a writer. He's a good writer. And if you were a writer, you could remain free. And you could be anonymous when you wanted to be. And he laughed. But I still maintain that to be president of something, in the case of our country, that is so lethal to other people in the world, is not a positive. How is it a positive to be, bombing people, droning people, supplying weapons to, countries that do awful things to everybody? It is not good, and it's very not good for our children. I really was not happy that he had a second term, because I could see that the direction that was being taken would mean that our children would have the unfortunate opportunity of seeing him go into behavior that actually I do not want to see them emulate.
I remember when I first heard Alice and Alexis would be in conversation together. I would have loved to have been in the audience for that, so congrats if you scored a ticket to that event. Now, we have to part company for a quick break, but stay tuned for our next story. It looks at what happens when Aboriginal dreaming stories meet virtual reality. We'll tell you more about the Generations of Knowledge project when we return, but first, let's hear about some of the praise that the project is already receiving.
Times change.
We need that generation.
Talk with our elders about the different parts of the dream.
I'm very excited because it's the launch of the Generations of Knowledge project, and it really celebrates our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander footprint.
Awe-inspiring, absolutely awe-inspiring. It really brings to life how much our Aboriginal communities have contributed to our history.
I hope we Australians are ready to listen and learn.
I got involved in this project because it was an opportunity for me to tell my story to the young people.
They look and see, right, and they learn, right?
It's heartwarming and heartfelt.
We have to fight for that recognition. We have to fight for that respect. And so we have to do what we need to do in order to get that respect.
I was so proud that at long last, after such a long, long time of Aboriginal people being invisible, to be standing proud and strong here at the university. How do you say my heart sings with joy in a sensible way that doesn't sound cheesy? It's something that allows me to see all these gorgeous men and women who have given so much to be a part of something so big and so profound, to be looking out at us from the walls, recorded at last in history.
As promised, we're finishing up today with a truly moving multi-platform project that was commissioned by the University of Western Sydney. Using photo albums, exhibitions, video testimonials and even computer games, this project is ensuring that everyone is able to access and learn about the culture, presence and contribution of Aboriginal people to our country.
Hello visitor, my name is Bill Amari. Welcome.
The Generation of Knowledge is an initiative from the University of Western Sydney. It contained several different activities. One of them was a presentation of Aboriginal elders. The pictures were presented in the UWS gallery. Then also there was a book released presenting the Aboriginal elders on campus. And also the last part was our virtual reality project depicting the life of Dara clan. In our project, we aim to preserve and present the Aboriginal cultural, historic and linguistic heritage.
Walk with me to meet the Darug people.
Aboriginal culture does not rely on written records, and in general you cannot show even pictures of deceased people, so it's a challenge to capture this culture. So that's why we thought that the best fit for this would be using modern digital technologies such as virtual reality. This could be the medium that can preserve the Aboriginal culture, since they don't depend on written records, yet all the culture and history is stored in rituals, dances, stories that are being told in the dream time. One of the other possibilities would be to use movies, but movies are a very static concept, right? When you capture a movie, it's unchangeable from there on within. So if you go that extra mile and capture it using virtual reality, you can reuse that content in many different ways. So far what we've done, we have recreated an area of a Parramatta somewhere in the year 1770. And we have recreated the life of a Darug clan living in this area, and we've portrayed several scenes from the daily life of this Darug clan.
Thank you for allowing us to visit you. We bring you this gift.
The Aboriginal language and culture is threatened by Western civilization. It's being westernized, and it's slowly fading away with passing of the Aboriginal elders and traditional owners. So we, as members of Western civilization, we felt the need of capturing this fascinating culture. They have a unique way of interacting with nature. They keep in balance with the nature, so I think that there is a lot we can learn from it, and mostly our young generation, in order to create this sustainable environment for our future. And the other thing we thought about is that throughout the history of Aboriginal people and the common history with the settlers, there have been a lot of misunderstandings. So we feel that if we portray the history from the both perspectives and both parts will understand what was going on, I think that the future generations can learn from these mistakes. So the current generation of kids are called digital natives. These are the kids that have been born in the era of internet, so they don't know the world before the internet. They grew up with Facebook, with Google, where information is there firsthand. With these kids, the traditional learning approaches no longer work, or they seem not to work as well as with the previous generations. This calls for a change of pedagogical approaches of how to educate these kids. So we found that using the interactive methods of education is the most efficient way of presenting more difficult content such as the history. What we've also needed was a human part of the projects. So that's when we've approached our Aboriginal elders, which have been really helpful throughout the project, and they help us to create the script for the project, so the plot, the narrative that we would like to tell, which was inspired by the different parts of Aboriginal dreaming. And also we needed some actors that would reenact the scenes, and we've used motion capture technology to do that. For me, the best outcome would be having a system where Aboriginal tribe or individuals would be able to capture their stories and rituals to preserve for future generations. Also, what we would like to have is having the same system where Western culture would be able to access it, to learn more about Aboriginal culture, learn from the unique way they interact with nature, and possibly make the Australia a better place.
This week I'm reviewing Am I Black Enough for You by Anita Heiss. It's not a new book, it came out a few years ago, but I've only just read it, so I think I can safely assume that there are lots of other people who haven't read it yet either, who should. Heiss has said that she hopes the book is able to help people appreciate that the power of self-identity and representation is a right that, as Australians, we should all enjoy. Anita Heiss claims the right to be herself. That is, an academic, an author of chick lit and children's books, a poet, and an ambassador for the Indigenous Literacy Foundation, amongst other things. Yet in 2009, along with a number of others, Heiss found herself the target of a conservative columnist who claimed that she and other light-skinned Aboriginal people had chosen to identify as Aboriginal for personal gain. Heiss and 8 others took the columnist to court. The writer hadn't just been offensive, he'd made false claims, and that's a polite way of saying he just made shit up. The group won the federal case. The book isn't about the case, although it touches upon it. It's about an original and compelling woman who is both Aboriginal and Australian. Heiss writes, "I've often felt that my life is about making others understand that you can't prescribe Aboriginality and that you can't place genetically based stereotypes on individuals." While Heiss's academic work is serious, it's in part about concepts of place and comparative approaches to Indigenous literature, this book is like a wonderful ongoing conversation between friends. It's chatty and it's accessible.
This week, it's a real thrill for me to introduce a book that's been sitting on my bedside table for more time than I care to admit, and which I finally got around to reading last week. It's Dylan Coleman's breakout novel, Maize and Grace, a moving and a heartbreaking story about life on a Lutheran mission in South Australia during the 1940s and 1950s. Grace Oldman, the central character, is a young, feisty Aboriginal girl who comes from a strong family, but when the story opens, she's struggling with questions around her identity because she doesn't know who her father is. Complicating this is the fact that she's mixed race and she feels a great deal of shame in not being part of either the black or the white community. The book follows Grace as she pieces together the clues that might help her find her father and the reasons she feels like an outsider in both communities. Now, I have to say I read this book with immense interest, but also with a very heavy heart. Underscoring Grace's search for her identity is the dark and unresolved history of Australia's brutal assimilation policies, ones that saw families like Grace's living in constant fear of having children removed and placed into state care. Throughout the novel, children and their parents, particularly those who are light-skinned like Grace, live with the continued threat of being taken, of never being seen by their family again. And coupled with this is the story of the slow bleed cultural genocide that saw Aboriginal people moved off their land and into religious white-run mission stations, divorced from tradition, land and culture, and the effects of which we see today. Now, on the basis of this description, you could be forgiven for thinking that Maize and Grace might be a depressing, albeit important lesson in history, but it's not. Coleman has written a book that carries a lightness in tone and rhythm while never straying from the realities of its world. It moves at a pace, dipping into amusing family relationships and the complexities of Aboriginal kin and skin relationships, and the kinds of coming-of-age experiences that are recognisable regardless of cultural background. Of particular interest is the way the author blends English with Kakatha, the language group of those in the novel. And this is not only an issue of scene setting and atmospherics, it also has, I think, very real political implications for questions around the silence and disappearance of Aboriginal languages. Amazing Grace is an important Australian novel. It provides a context for intergenerational trauma and the effects of colonialisation, dispossession and oppression, reimagined through fiction. It won the David Unipon Award for Indigenous Writing, and it gets a big thumbs up from me.
This week, we've been concentrating on stories from home, and to celebrate this important theme, Shelf Life is giving away another great prize pack of books. To win, just go to the Shelf Life website and tell us in one concise paragraph what issues you believe local storytellers should be examining and why. Write your entry in the contact section and make sure you put Stories from Home competition in the subject line, and good luck.
Well, that's us out of time for this week. As always, you can catch up on anything you missed by visiting our website.
We've really enjoyed sharing some distinctly Australian stories with you, but of course we've only skimmed the surface, so get out there into your own community and see what sort of stories are being told. And be sure to be back on your couch for Shelf Life next week when we speak to a number of truly compelling women and also ask uni students what feminism means to them.
Until then, it's been great sharing these Australian storytelling projects with you. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.